What's up, guys? I hope you're well. Today we're checking out Fernando Alonso's worst Formula One cars. Keep in mind he's my favorite racer. Also, keep in mind this video is like 4.5 years old, so there's probably some worse cars that he's been stuck with since. But let's get into it, shall we?
It's remarkable to think Fernando Alonso has only driven the fastest car on the F1 grid in one of his 17 seasons as a race driver. As a comparison, Michael Schumacher, Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna had the fastest car 6 times during their careers.
Jesus.
And Lewis Hamilton has now driven the fastest car on the grid 7 times.
See?
For one of F1's greatest drivers of all time,
Maxie.
Alonso has had to put up with a lot of average machinery. And it's the
Well, of course that car sucks. It's got CNN as a sponsor.
worst of those cars we're here to focus on. So, using the primary criteria of Autosport's super times and Alonso's team's championship positions in those seasons, let's begin the countdown. Number 8, Ferrari, 2014. Alonso drove the 4th fastest car on the grid 4 times in his career, but it was Ferrari's first attempt with the new V6 hybrid engine regulations that was the furthest off the pace of these cars.
Dang.
The F1 4T was no match for the dominant Mercedes package, but Ferrari did such a bad job that it was also beaten by Williams and Red Bull, even though the latter also got off to a dreadful start under the new rules with
Ferrari
Renault.
just keeps getting the
In
shit
terms of
kicked
its
out of
pace
them in
deficit to
these
the
videos,
fastest car,
don't they?
the
It's kinda
2014
funny.
Ferrari was significantly further adrift than the 2012 car, which Alonso dragged to within a whisker of that year's World Championship. Ultimately, this was the car that led to Alonso's surprise split from Ferrari at the end of 2014, ending a 5-year stint that failed to live up to the high expectations that were set when he joined in 2010. Number 7, Renault, 2008. The 2007 McLaren was the only car Alonso raced in his career that was on average the fastest car over the course of a whole season, and McLaren's 2008 car took Lewis Hamilton to his maiden World Championship. Unfortunately, Alonso missed out on driving the MP4-23, having fallen out with the team so spectacularly over the course of 2007 that he left after just 1 year with McLaren and headed back to his old friends at Renault.
Wow.
But the team had fallen from grace in its year without the 2-time world champion, and in 2008 its car was only the 5th fastest on the grid. Alonso scored points 6 times in the first 12 races of the year, but his and Renault's season was transformed by back-to-back victories late in the campaign, helping him to 5th in the championship. The first of those wins was the controversial Singapore Grand Prix, where Renault team management ordered Nelson Piquet Jr. to deliberately crash to cause a safety car period that would benefit Alonso's strategy. He followed it up with a stunning victory at Fuji, but those results had seemed a long way off early in the season when the car was so far off the pace. Number 6, McLaren, 2017. Alonso and McLaren never tired of telling the world how great.
It's kind of cool that they're showing like all the statistics with that car. You know, wins, poles. So that's kind of cool that they're showing all that.
Its cars were during the doomed return of Honda, repeatedly piling on the pressure and the blame to its troubled engine supplier. But the best McLaren Honda managed during 3 forgettable years back together was to come up with the 6th fastest car for the new aero rules in 2017. While Alonso continued to talk up the performance of the chassis, he was so dismayed with McLaren's performance levels from the moment pre-season testing began that he negotiated a deal to skip the Monaco Grand Prix to make his debut in the Indy 500. He went to Indy, led the race and was a victory contender until, you guessed it, his Honda engine let him down.
Damn it!
Back in F1 in 2017, he scored points only 5 times that season, taking a best finish of 6th in Hungary. Number 5, Renault, 2009. Alonso's late season success in 2008 proved to be a false dawn, as Renault was one of several teams caught out by the major rule changes for the following year. The mixed up nature of the 2009 season, which started with Brawn dominating, ended with Red Bull as the team to beat and featured pole positions for Toyota and Force India in between, means that on average the Renault, which also took a surprise pole with Alonso in Hungary, wasn't that far off the ultimate pace. But the field was so close during that season that Renault was on average only the 7th fastest car, and after Alonso's first winless season since 2004, he left the team again to chase victory with Ferrari. Number 4, McLaren, 2016. A difficult first year back with McLaren in 2015 could have been forgiven if the reborn Honda partnership got things together the following year. But even though there was progress, it was nowhere near enough. 2016 was a season most memorable for Alonso's huge crash at the season opening Australian Grand Prix,
Wow.
2 fifth places, and somehow a fastest lap in the Italian Grand Prix. Alonso and Jenson Button had to make do with hauling the 7th fastest car on the grid to 6th in the Constructors' Championship.
That sucks.
But at that stage, it at least appeared that Honda was starting to get on top of the reliability issues and finding some performance from its engine. Hopes were high for 2017, which, as we've already seen, didn't go to plan when Honda went for a major overhaul of its engine and McLaren did little more than talk a good game with the 2017 aero rule changes.
Damn.
Number
Another
3,
shitty year.
McLaren 2018. This was supposed to be the year that Alonso's patience and persistence with McLaren and Honda was finally rewarded, but instead this could go down as the car that pushed him away from F1 for good.
Wow.
McLaren switched to the Renault engine that has enabled Red
Glad
Bull
he's
to
still
win
in it,
races in
man.
recent
Wow.
years, and the expectation was that McLaren could finally show how much its chassis had been held back by those pesky Japanese power units over the previous 3 years. Unfortunately for Alonso, McLaren got found out, producing a car that was clearly the slowest of the 3 Renault-powered teams on the grid, and shining a spotlight on all the hype Alonso and McLaren had created about his chassis during the doomed Honda years. Even a major update, which was pushed back to the Spanish Grand Prix after not being ready for the start of the season, couldn't salvage McLaren's year, and team CEO Zak Brown eventually labelled the MCL33 an extremely poor race car that was not responsive to changes. By the end of the year, this car was almost as far off the pace as the next one on our list. Number 2, McLaren 2015. Back in 2015, the names McLaren and Honda were still synonymous with success in Formula 1, having won 4 straight championships together from 1988 to 91, before Honda bowed out at the end of 92, following defeat by Williams and Renault.
Wow.
McLaren felt the return of a factory Mercedes team to F1 had left it in a situation where it wouldn't be able to win championships as a customer to the German manufacturer, so it reunited with Honda, claiming the deal gave McLaren what it needed to remain one of the big teams on the grid.
Well, they lied.
With Alonso signed up to return at the same time, expectations went through the roof, although a disastrous test at the end of 2014 in Abu Dhabi hinted at what was to come and showed just how big the mountain was that Honda needed to climb.
Man.
Alonso finished in the points twice all season as McLaren slumped to 9th in the Constructors' Championship,
Holy
with a car
shit.
that was comfortably the slowest produced by the doomed second coming of McLaren Honda. Number 1, Minardi 2001. McLaren's blushes are spared in this countdown thanks to Alonso starting his career with the lovable Italian backmarker, which clearly had the slowest car on the grid in 2001.
Dang.
Minardi almost didn't make it onto the grid that year and had to use the ageing Cosworth engine, reckoned to be 160 horsepower down and 30 kilograms heavier than the best in the field.
Wow. You're
That
not
didn't
gonna
stop
win
Alonso
shit.
putting in performances that marked him out as one to watch for the future, as he qualified 18th out of 22 cars 6 times that season, and was even 17th at Indianapolis in a late season burst of star
Stupid
performances that included finishing 11th and 13th in 2 of the final 3 races once the more competitive B-spec chassis was in use. The Minardi that year was on average 4.4% off the pace of Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, which puts it significantly further adrift than any of the other cars Alonso raced during his F1 career. That's the end of our list. Let us know what you thought of our countdown and which cars were missed or which ones were...
What do you guys think? I mean, none of those videos, like I said, 4.5 years old, but you think Fernando is going to retire after this season? I really hope he doesn't. I mean, I want to keep cheering him on for at least one more year. Give me one more year, buddy. But we'll see. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know I did. It was very interesting and kind of fascinating to know that most of his cars he's driven in his career have been absolute shit. But with that being said, I want to thank you all for watching. Stay safe and don't forget to wash your hands. Bye.